There. And
work session with council and the planning commission order. This is July 15th, 2025. I want to welcome everybody, those who showed up in person and those who are joining us online. This is a work session, a special work session. We're going to have public comment right off the bat. So if you have something to say, please raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Come to the front, give us your name and your address. So with that, I'm going to open up public comment. I see Rob Cahill, number one. Or would you like me over here so you can be seen by everybody? That's good. Yeah.
I'm Rob Cahill, 608 Water Street. Mr. Mayor, Council, I wrote these comments down and gave them to Tracy if there's a public record. Three first key points. I believe convening this special session today is the right thing to do in the public interest. In the same breath, I also believe it should not have been necessary to hold this session. Like every other citizen and stakeholder in the city of Beaufort, I believe the Chamber of Commerce had more than ample opportunity for their voice to be heard. The facts. Chapter 9, red line, posted 20 times on the Planning Commission website. Chapter 7, red line, posted 16 times on the Planning Committee website. The time period, 15 months, no chamber input. I'm gonna ask a rhetorical question. If I can wait until the 11th hour to make a comment that triggers a special council meeting on my issue only, why should I play ball any earlier? I'm confident everyone in this room agrees that processes, rules, and procedures are in place for a purpose. Megan, who you spoke last week, are you here? Hello. I don't know you and you don't know me. What I learned from your website is you're a native Beaufortonian and you've been president of the chamber for almost 4 years now. Congratulations. Even if you were my best friend, I would still stand here and admonish you. Maybe we will become best friends over time. I hope so. I'm a real newcomer to Beaufort, 10 years. Professionally, I've worked on leadership, strategy, and governance domain for over 50 years. Since attending the strategic planning meeting in January 24, I've attended every work session and regular council meeting that I've been here in person. As president, you should know better. I doubt you would tolerate such behavior by a member of your chamber. It's not the job of the city government to educate you. The resources that have been distracted, I would say wasted, to convene this hearing are significant. I want to close with a 3-point summary. As I said earlier, I think today's meeting is in the public interest. Council member Ms. Mitchell was right last Tuesday when he said in the chamber upstairs, paraphrase, you put the council between a rock and a hard spot. The chamber is a valued member of the Beaufort community. While we don't condone their lateness, we value their input. 2, all the time, energy, and costs, including police, invested in staff work. Convening today's meeting is a waste of scarce and valuable government resources and volunteer citizens' time. It could be better spent. Last, to you, Megan, I strongly encourage you to open your remarks, if you do, by offering a public apology. Thank you for listening.
Now,
Good afternoon to speak, Council and Commission. My name is Diane Farrelly, 2415 Oak Haven Street, Beaufort, South Carolina. I'm computer froze where all my notes are, so I don't have the questions that I had for you, but I did want to make a couple of comments. One, that the agenda that went out did not have a time listed. I found out the time of the meeting this morning. It's a matter of procedure. And it's got it right now. I do agree with the gentleman's comments about this being an unnecessary meeting, as well as the comments that were referenced in the for the amendments do not match up with the, so it was pretty hard to follow along. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, how are you? I'm not sure I know all of your protocols, so bear with me, but my name is Stephen Kirsch. I live at Live Oaks, 2200 Spanish Court. And the reason I'm here is related to, I'm not sure if I'm using the right word, but I believe there's a referendum related to allowing communities to be gated. And I feel strongly that that should be left up to communities. I moved into the Live Oaks community just a couple of years ago, and safety and security are really important to myself, my family members, other community members. And it's really important that we be able to make that choice. I'm not saying we're going to put up gates at the Live Oaks community, but I think there's a difference between us making the decision to become a gated community versus people taking that ability away from us. And there have been various incidents not that far away from where we live. And I think as people in the community, we all want to be safe. So hopefully I followed the protocol, but I'm just speaking as a citizen and as a person who lives in Live Oaks.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, Megan?
Good afternoon, members of council and members of the planning commission. As you know, I'm Megan Morris, and I represent hundreds of businesses here in the Beaufort region through the Beaufort Regional Chamber of Commerce. We would like to collectively thank you for hosting this work session today to finalize the first round of development code revisions and for your overall commitment to the process. We have had some very productive and positive conversations with city leadership, and we are looking forward to working together as this continues. Through the thorough revision of the development code, we see that it is not merely a technical exercise, it is an opportunity to shape the economic future of our beloved. Behind every regulation, procedural standard, and ordinance lies the economic heart of our city. The businesses that line our streets, the workers that serve our citizens, and the families who live here, they are all interconnected as an economic ecosystem that depends on balanced governance. We do have a very beautiful, diverse community. And as you've seen in most of the economic reports that the chambers and others have produced and made available, there are many challenges for us all to overcome, of which the development code could affect. When regulations are crafted, they play a role in determining whether businesses can thrive, adapt, and continue to serve as economic anchors for our community. Our local businesses contribute millions in commercial property taxes, business licenses, and permit fees that fund our schools, our infrastructure, and public services. We employ thousands of our neighbors, creating careers and opportunities. Our workforce, the teachers who educate our children, the first responders who keep us safe, the service workers who ensure that our community continues to function, the family members of the military and the service members who ensure national security, and even the 200+ members of Team Beaufort increasingly do find themselves priced out of the community that they are serving and living in. We understand there's not just a housing problem, but also that infrastructure challenges, the goal of maintaining quality of life and our culture, as well as being good stewards of our environment, are all at play. To be clear, advocating for economic consideration does not mean abandoning our commitment to Beaufort human character and quality of life. Indeed, our economic prosperity depends on maintaining the very qualities that make our city special. We must find a careful balance between preservation and progress, between protecting what we love and enabling what we need. This balance requires that we consider not just what we want to prevent, but what we want to enable and encourage. There are examples, I think, that are nearby we would like to avoid. Places with overdevelopment and sprawl, high cost of living leading to substantial loss of workforce, and perhaps worse, towns that have detrimental detrimentally decline due to lack of industry and opportunity. Each of those examples are only an hour away. So as you move forward with this extensive code revision and other policymaking and comprehensive planning efforts, thank you for keeping in mind that balanced governance takes all of this into account. Again, thank you for your hard work and diligence. I'd like to think, and I stand for many when I say this, that considering economic viability in this development code and finalizing it with a collaborative effort is not time lost, but an investment in our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Morris. Okay, anyone else for public comment before I close it? Go ahead, Tony. Graham Trask?
Yes.
Hi, Rand Trask, 1211 Bay Street. Mr. Cromer, I understand we're not allowed to use your first name, so I won't. Because one of your employees was chastised for using first names of the council. Will we have an opportunity? I mean, this is a work session. Will we have an opportunity as you go through? Because I do have specific comments about this, and I don't know if this is the opportunity to do that because in public comment, I have a general public comment to make. I'd prefer to make the general public comment and then raise my hand as you go through. I think that'll be more efficient.
Go to the council. Okay. All right, that's fine, Mr. Trask. If you want to go ahead and make your comment, your general comment, and then we'll go through, as we go through, you can raise your hand.
Okay, I just wanted to echo Rob Cahill's comments. I think, and I also want to express that I don't believe the Chamber of Commerce actually represents the landowners. They may represent, and those are the landowners are the ones that are actually paying the property tax. They may represent the businesses that lease from the landowners, but they have asserted that they, in the council meeting, that they represent the landowners, and I beg to differ. I'm not a member of the Chamber of Commerce by design. I know other major landowners that are not a member of the chamber. I didn't hear any specific comments from Megan about the changes. I assume she's going to make those throughout the process, as I will too. I did do some due diligence as to why that letter was written as it was, and it seems like it was a bit of a hatchet job, pushed by one particular property owner in the city at the last minute. Again, if the Chamber of Commerce had its act together, it would have participated throughout the 15-month process to have provided its input. Thank you, and I look forward to commenting as we go along.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, we're going to close public comment and we're going to go to discussion and an ordinance amending Chapter 7 Land Development, Chapter 9 Development Review Procedure in the Beaufort Development Code. I'm going to open it up to council first. I think Councilman Scaletti has some remarks to make, and then we'll turn it over to clerk with Planning Commission. Josh?
Yeah.
Council.
Okay, so first of all, I want to thank staff for putting this joint session together. I do think that this is important and it gives us an opportunity to go through. I'm actually still recovering from a pretty big injury, so I may not look like it, but I am extremely uncomfortable. I think the best thing for me is to try to go through page by page and just identify some of the concerns that I do have. And then whenever I get to the finish, if you guys want to make notes as I go, then you can address those if it needs to be. There's a strong chance that since I am not a developer and you guys have a lot more experience in this than I do, that I might get tangled up, but maybe just a little bit of clarification on some things would help me and maybe some others as well. So I'm starting, I don't know if you guys have the same packet in front of you that I have in front of me. I'm starting on page 104, which is the red line summaries for Chapter 7. So there was obviously some language added in the purpose and applicability. I didn't see anything there that jumped out at me as inappropriate. All seemed to fit. On page 107, there was a cross-reference that was struck out under 7.1.5 improvement guarantees. And I think that based on the way this is structured now, a cross-reference to section 7.5.5 would be appropriate there to discuss final subdivision plat. I still find a lot of value when I'm going through the code in having the cross references there. So I would say instead of striking that cross reference out, just add the new cross reference in where somebody could go back to refer to the final subdivision. Moving on, right now I'm on page 109. Do you guys have the same packet?
Just to clarify, Councilman, so A, 7.15 A types allowed, where section 9.94 is.
Yeah, that's the one I have now. Yeah, so this is the one that we just received.
I've got the same one.
Yeah, so here's right, starting the red line, yep. So
You're okay, as long as you reference
the
the
section,
sections,
okay,
we can find it.
okay,
No, I just wanted to clarify. and make sure.
Yeah.
So you said 7.1. 7.1.5 A, and where it says section 9.94, which is struck,
yep.
we'd like to put section 7.
That's right. I think that's the appropriate cross-reference now with the way that it's structured, but just to continue having a cross-reference in there, I think would be valuable. I'm now on page 109 under scope of improvements for street frontage.
Give us a second.
Okay, the section is 7.2.1 street infrastructure plans. Under C2 applicability scope of improvements. The last portion of that paragraph, the code administrator may permit modification of street improvement standards where the required street improvements are not, in the opinion of the code's administrator, roughly proportionate to the impact. I just don't think that that is very predictable, and I know that that was one thing that was extremely important as we were going through this process, was to have a code that was predictable. So if our requirements are hard and we're picky, I think that's okay, but I think code needs to be as predictable as possible. And for this to read that street improvements are not in the opinion of the code administrator, I feel like that's not very predictable. That's again, just my opinion. Let me back up because I missed one note here. Applicability. So this is C1 in that same section. And it talks about the financial guarantees. So the last sentence in that paragraph reads, the installation of street frontage improvements is required prior to final plat approval for major subdivisions and certificates of occupancy for site plans. And I think that should probably be for a financial guarantee, because isn't that an option? So they can either do a financial guarantee to get the approval, or they can make the improvements, whatever is more appropriate. And the way that this reads is they have to make the or they're required to make the street frontage improvements. And so maybe just an addition of or financial guarantee, and then refer back to where that's discussed. But that was a note that I made. Moving forward, I am now on, we had some members in the community discuss the gated streets. So that is section 7.2.2 street network requirements. Personally, I'm more a fan of the way that it read before. New gates or new gated streets are not encouraged, but there were exceptions. And the way that it reads now is new gated streets are prohibited. And then there are some exceptions, but I feel like we would want to leave that flexibility there to where if neighbors got together and they decided that they wanted to have a gated community or gated street, then that discussion could at least be on the table. Section, I would just like maybe a better understanding of section 7.2.3 lot access standards. Particularly the maximum number of driveways. It says for single family or 2 or 3 family dwellings, only 1 driveway shall be permitted per lot. And T3S circular driveways may be permitted on lots greater than 100 feet in width where no sidewalk exists. Driveways may only be installed where rear access is not possible or required. And then it goes on to talk about, basically 1 driveway, for anything that's less than 150 feet. And I know a lot of lots in Mossy Oaks, particularly where I live, that either have a circle driveway, a U-shaped driveway. And I don't think that it's something that's not becoming, or I think it fits within our character well. So I'm not sure why the justification for only 1 driveway and no circular, but maybe a little bit of clarification could help my understanding. And then same thing for the still in that same section, lot access standards, but a little further down. Yes, page number is 115. Yep,
Same page.
okay. Literally, where it says rear access, no front access. So the way I interpret that is no new lots for zones T3N and T4 can have basically a driveway in the front. For lots developed in the transects T3N and T4 and T5UC, lots, all new access points shall be from a rear alley or road, except for lots within the historic district. So is that to say that there could be no driveway in the front, that all driveways and new accesses for lots in these zones need to be from the rear? If so, I don't know that I would agree with that, because most of the homes have driveways in the front now, and I think that makes sense. But again, maybe that just needs to be clarified for me. The next page over, page 116, street design standards. This is just grammatical stuff, but it says I'm in 7.2.4 street design standards under bullet B. It says it about in the middle of that paragraph. I'll start where it says United States Department of Transportation's manual on uniform traffic control devices, in parentheses MUTCD, close parentheses, and approved by the administrator. I think there needs to be a or right there, or the administrator's designee, and then there's 2 commas, so just strike one of the commas, and then that sentence would flow and make sense. But the way that it reads right now is it just says, and approved by the administrator designee, and there's no break there. Again, this is grammatical, the next bullet down, C. 2, it says there are unusual topographic, vegetative, or other natural conditions would render it strict adherence. So I don't think that flows well. And perhaps it's just a matter of saying, instead of striking, well, you struck to the extent, so vegetative or other natural conditions that would render the strict adherence. But I think maybe that paragraph just needs to be reviewed, because right now it seems to not flow. Moving on, I'm under let's skip that actually, because that's not too big. A lot of so there's an exemption for traffic impact analysis that does concern me on lots included in the Boundary Street Master Plan adopted on August 28, 2006, and lots in the areas bounded by Calhoun, Carteret, Bay Street, Rebo Road. There's an exemption on traffic impact analysis, and that's one of our biggest issues right now is traffic on Boundary Street and Roberts Mall Parkway. And there's a lot of development that falls in there. So if we are not bound legally to make that an exemption, I think maybe revisiting that would be prudent, because there are also a lot of additional roads built into that master plan that was adopted in August of 2006 that provided relief for traffic on Boundary Street. Oh, sorry, I'm on page 118. Yep, at the top where it says exception. So what's exempt is the Boundary Street Master Plan, and again, there's a lot of roads built into that plan that were never put in place, and so to make that exempt from traffic impact analysis, I think could continually compound our congestion issues. So,
Good to understand.
yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure.
No, no worries.
If that's okay. You're saying that you believe that the Boundary Street exemption should be.
Unless we are legally bound by some agreement at that time, I would say at least let's consider, because there's, like I said, there's a lot of relief roads built into that master plan that never came to fruition, and now we have a lot of congestion on that road. So I'd hate to see our issues compound just because that was exempt from traffic impact analysis. Down to C on the same page, traffic impact analysis plan preparation. 2, prior to beginning the TIA, the applicant shall supply the city. We crossed that out to capitalize city. I think capitalized I as well. That's just grammatical. So just lowercase I would fix that. And then B, a site location map showing surrounding development within 1/2 mile radius of the property under development consideration. I'm not sure if that's okay the way that it reads, or if that should reflect a 1 mile radius. I know that there are 2 different variations in the breakdown that you guys laid out. There's a 1/2 mile, and then there's a mile from any vested but unbuilt developments. So I don't know if that needs to reflect a mile or not. I put it in there as a note. Then the next thing is your chart where you guys laid out the traffic impact analysis. And I think you did a very good job. I know just as a layperson reading that, it was kind of easy for me to understand what was being required. I don't know that I agree with the language that says at the discretion of the TRC or planning commission, a larger study area may be required, because again, that's not very predictable as to when it might be required. And so I'm not sure. I have a hard time with that, just because there was that underlying important theme of being predictable. But again, I'd like to know, I agree with the incorporation of all traffic impact analysis studies and trip generation from approved developments or vested unbuilt developments within mile radius at time of proposal. But I would like to better understand why we went with a 1/2 mile for some and a mile for the already vested but unbuilt developments. I like it. I would just like to understand what the more of the context, I guess. I'm on page 123 now, on this is the same section, but this is just after city engineer, section right before mitigation plan required. So lowercase I2. The first major intersection as identified by the city engineer, I think that should probably be city engineer or administrator. And in certain places in here, it says that, and then in other areas, it just says city engineer. On page 125, this would be mitigation plan application. I'm on bullet 8 or H. A TIA shall be submitted to the TRC. And then on I, it says completeness, the planning commission and or TRC shall determine whether a TIA is complete. And then J says the TRC must first approve the TIA in regard to completeness and accuracy. So I just think that that needs to read the planning commission and the TRC shall determine whether the TIA is complete, not and or, because it is going to be both. The way that this is written out, the TRC approves it for completeness, and then it goes to the planning commission, and the planning commission is also required to approve or not. And so I think that just striking that word "and" would be appropriate. I like the percentages. I think that's exactly what we were expressed concern about the open space and green space, having more percentages to provide more land preservation and less exemptions. So I appreciate the changes that you guys made there. On the chart under section 7.4.3, community green space and community open space, I'm not sure what the thought is for some of the minimum requirements in here. So you have the regional park / national preserve, and then the definition of what that is. And then under regional minimum, it's 200 acres. For a sports complex, regional minimum 25 acres. I think you can do a sports complex for less than 25 acres, and I'm not sure that the regional park needs to be 200 acres. So I'm not sure why those minimums were put in place, but maybe some institutional thought could help clarify that for me. Same thing goes for a community park. We put a minimum of 8 acres for a community park. I think that would be based on the percentage of the development. So we have that built in now to where, based on what you're developing and how many acres, there's a certain percentage that's required for open space and green space. So I'm not sure why we also have community park with a minimum of 8 acres here. It seemed, I'm sorry, that's page 128. That's page 128. Same thing for a pocket park / pocket plaza. So it says, the max is half an acre. I don't know what a pocket park is. I would kind of look at one like Wilson Park over there as a little pocket park. Maybe that's just me not interpreting it well, but Wilson Park is 0.78 of an acre. And so I'm not sure why we would put a max on pocket park of half acre, because sometimes I think it could be a little bigger and still makes sense. But maybe we just need to revisit that whole.
Good example, Pocket Park, if you go down North Street on the other side of Remote Road, on the left-hand side, there's a little park there. That's a good example of a pocket park.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I'm now on the 7.5 substandards and site plan. This is the whole red pages that were added. So let's go page 133. Yep. So 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs down. Prior to formal submittal of any submission application identified in this section, the planning department will typically provide to an applicant an individualized submittal checklist. I read that and thought, well, I think that's probably something that would always be provided. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I would strike the word typically, and maybe Kurt, you would weigh in and say otherwise. But I don't know of a time where we wouldn't provide a checklist for the subdivision as to what's expected or required. So I would say maybe scratch typically.
That's one of the amendments, strike typically.
Oh, okay, got it. And then moving down, minor subdivisions, the boundaries of, so this is number 1. The boundaries of 6 or fewer lots are created from one parent tract. I'm okay with the changes that are made here, but I think that would be, if you read further down under major subdivisions, number 2, it says the subdivision consists of 6 or more lots or tracts. And so this would probably need to be the boundaries of 5.
That was changed for the amendments.
Yeah.
That was amendments for what?
That's only amendments that came with.
In front of the packet.
In front of the packet.
That haven't been made in here though?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So those are addressed.
Those ones
Gotcha.
that were already.
Okay.
Identified.
Cool. And then 7.5.3 sketch plan. So it looks like sketch plan is required for all major subdivisions. And I'm gonna come back to why I feel like that's important, but maybe needs to be somewhere else. But on the next page, 135, read the three small i's, at the top of the page. A current preliminary traffic impact study prepared by a licensed traffic engineer, which evaluates proposed access points. I know we stated other, in other locations in here, but maybe just adding that that is a South Carolina, licensed traffic engineer, if that's what we're gonna require, would make sense just to be consistent with the language, throughout this code.
It was also using the packet. I think that was something the chamber brought up. And after our discussion, we removed the traffic impact study requirement and just basically needed a. You know, basically just study of access points.
Instead of a preliminary traffic impact?
That's right.
Okay, gotcha.
So you'll see that on the front.
Okay,
We could have the.
that they're South Carolina?
South Carolina.
Yeah,
I guess we could have like Virginia or North Carolina, but that's probably not a good idea.
Right.
So.
right. Under the, number 5, overall utility plan, about halfway through, utility plans for the interior of development such as water and sewer lines are not required in this part of the process. I'm not sure why we want to add what's not included. I think we're only talking about what is being required here, and so I would see maybe striking that and striking, half of number 19 as well, because it also is talking about utility plans for the interior of the development, not being required in this process. And I don't know why we would need to identify what's not required, because this is only talking about what following elements are that are required. But maybe you guys talked about that and found justification for it.
So just so I understand, I'm sorry.
Yep. No, you're good.
I'm just trying to follow you. So you said the letter of the appropriate, is that 19?
That is 19, yep. About halfway through, it says utility plans for the interior of the development such as water and sewer service lines are not required as part of this process. Interior of the development, water and sewer lines are not required as part of this process. So it says it twice. I don't even know that it needs to say it once, because you're only talking about what is required here. And so it goes without saying that's not required, but yeah, okay, sketch plan process, number 2, notification, notice to neighbors and property owners. The city shall send notice of the planning commission meeting by regular mail to neighboring property owners within 500 feet of the property per this code. I could see value in stretching that out. I know that's a little bit more effort on staff's part, so I want to be careful and not speak for you guys there, but 500 feet doesn't really go far. And as an example, when Garden Oaks was being developed, you know, Salem Bay wouldn't have even been notified because that's outside 500 feet. So, you know, I know it's typically in between 500 and 1,000, but maybe we extend that a little bit. G, never mind, I'm gonna skip that one. I had a question on number 4. So time frame related to the approval sketch plan. And then number 4 does not change any measurable standard such as open space or park area by more than 10%. And I think that's good, but my concern is, what if I come to you and I make a change that's 7% of my originally approved project, and then I come back a couple of months later with another 5% change? Is there a protection to protect against compounding changes? Should this read by more than 10% of the originally approved? Or is that already covered? So my concern was compounding percentage changes there.
And that's on page 138.
That's on page 138.
So you want like cumulative statement.
I think, yeah, just to protect for cumulative changes. Under preliminary plat number A2, again, the capital I there in city, so that's just grammatical. Then we are under the preliminary plat here. I guess it would still be preliminary plat. D on page 141. utility and transportation design are adequate given the existing and planned capacities of those systems. I don't know if there's a way I would favor us being able to get that information in the sketch plan process and not preliminary, just because I think you're pretty vested in at that time and there would be value in knowing what the utility capabilities are prior to even getting that far along. And I know there have been issues in the past where developers have, gotten through the sketch plan process and they're pretty heavily vested in, and they find out that the utility capabilities are not there for that development, and they've got to either make substantial investments to add pump stations or whatever they have to do. But I think that if there was a way for us to better communicate with Buford, Jasper, or whoever, to ensure that they can understand what those capacities were prior to even starting, or even closer to the front in the sketch plan phase, then that would be more favorable in my opinion. But maybe there's a justification for why that wouldn't work or why it doesn't make sense.
If I may, I think,
Yes.
if you don't mind.
No.
I think the reason that's in there is because if you remember when we went back to sketch plan, we were striking the preliminary traffic impact, so we thought that might be too burdensome. The idea is it's a sketch and they don't have to put in all the engineering expertise per se, right, and all these, that's the goal, because by the preliminary, you do like a full TIA, where you would have the knowledge of transportation. This time, adequate, do I have to put some turn lane, extra rows? That's now the utility side of it, that is a little more complex because of the fact
Third parties and
water and sewer is separate from us. But,
Right.
So it's something that we can think about, but definitely for transportation, we would know per se, we would know until we got our finals.
okay.
That would be the justice.
Yep.
I'm not trying.
No, that's okay. That's it. That's exactly. I think some of this is just, me having better understanding. Under early grading, the page 142, the last back half of that last sentence. Final plat approval at the planning commission is expressed or implied by any operation of early grading. I don't know if that could put us in a legal bind down the road. I guess I would understand, but here's the situation is let's say for a final plat, you had now preliminary approval and they go ahead and clear cut or start grading or whatever they do. And then at final plat, maybe in their mind, it conforms. I know the language says that it has to conform to the preliminary plat, but if 4 members out of the 7 on the planning commission feel otherwise, and the final plat doesn't get approved, we have a sentence in there that says final plat approval at the planning commission is expressed or implied by any authorization of early grading. So I just questioned if that would prevent or present any legal concerns, and maybe I know we got several attorneys that weighed in on this, and so maybe that could be easily explained away, but just a note that I made. On page 146, number 5, post-approval actions prior to issuance of a building or grading permit, the applicant shall submit the following documentation to the city. I felt like this may be better if it was moved over, if they can start the grading after preliminary, then perhaps we need to get the list of contractors, proof of insurance, open space deed restriction, construction, traffic control, at the end of the preliminary process, because right now it's in the final plat phase. And if they're able to start grading before that, maybe it's better moved to preliminary, but just made a note there.
We do issue a grading permit. Preliminary.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
It's a very common thing to do.
But wouldn't you want to get the list of contractors
for the grading permit.
at that time?
Require their business license. But we wouldn't, traffic control plan, et cetera, we wouldn't, because it's just grading. I'm just trying to explain that a little bit.
Okay, so maybe some of that would make sense over in the preliminary before they started the early grading, and then maybe some of it, the traffic control plan would make sense for final.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could,
Because essentially, the way that it's written, they could get a permit for grading before we have a list of their contractors, proof of insurance.
yeah, and that's just something I think that we require that permit for it with the contractors, like, so maybe we just need to put that in there.
Isn't there supposed to be a knot there? I mean, right before that language, early grading and storage of construction related equipment is at the risk of the applicant. Final plat approval at the planning commission
Yeah.
is not expressed.
Yeah, I think that's. Right,
So there's a mistaken draft.
Okay.
for the red line, it's like probably fixed in the clean version.
Well, and I guess that makes it challenging because I'm reading this as if this is the final draft. And so trying to get these things ironed out before, you know, especially because we were right to begin second reading, but it appears that maybe we haven't even read the most clean version of this. This is the most clean version I've received.
So Councilman Saletti, the way this agenda packet was set up is attachment 1 contains all the motions that, to the best of the staff's ability, they understand were desired by council. And so you'd have to call those motions, fact those back to the document. You don't have a final version of documents in here. We're not allowed to change those between first reading and second reading. They can't be changed.
Right, but I don't need,
Where we can introduce proposed language motions for the amendments that we think that you want. So that's how the information is organized.
Yeah, so if you look at on page 47. I think, and you know, I take responsibility for this. I think, as you can see, the amount of red line changes and track changes can be over 20 meetings. Can be a little complicated. I think it's been complicated with the planning commission. But the final version, which is what you had your ordinance, the clean version, I think there's a few little things that it says and no final plat approval on 47. So I think a few of these little tiny, you know, more scrivener's errors were made at this clean version, the final version. But you're still raising a lot of really good points. Why, you know, I'm not sure, you know, I'm not sure if that was just when they're accepted, right? You know, anytime you touch this track changes, if it comes out of it, it comes out for good. Does that make sense?
yeah.
And so I think that's just, I probably should have, whereas I think a lot of the clean version had all of that kind of really intensive kind of making sure that those things were done. But again, you're bringing up a good point with that, but in the case of the no, that wasn't a clean version.
Okay,
So
well,
the no express.
I think what I'm gonna do then is, because I don't even know if this isn't the most clean version, I'm gonna
Well, I
touch
think
on,
I think it is. I think the challenge is once when you go to accept, right?
right. Then
It changes
making
all
the
this
changes that-
formatting because it's in Microsoft Word and then this had to be reformatted and. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
To go to clean, and then that's, I think, my responsibility, right? And so there's a few tiny little things like that that I think maybe got. Yes.
I'm gonna make-
Like a capitalization or
Also,
I'm gonna-
the amendments, there are some issues there as well. They're referencing the wrong.
yeah, the references were from the code that I think the chamber had.
I'm gonna try to just do, I'm gonna go, if you'll go with me to the permit chart, and then I'm gonna wrap up my portion because, yeah, at this point, I wanna make sure that at least the comments are true to what the latest version is. So go to the permit chart on page 165 and 166. And then look at, so here are some of my concerns with this chart. You'll go to development design review. We talk about, this is development design review for a minor site plan. And we say the permit approval is good for 24 months with a 12-month one-time extension. And if you'll go to page 89, 189, where it discusses this portion, minor development, it says permit validity. upon the approval of the minor development design application, the applicant shall have 1 year to obtain a building permit. Failure to secure a building permit for the permitted work within this time shall render the approval void. And so for me, I think that, the language needs to be consistent with the information that's in the chart. What I'm seeing in my thing here is the chart reflects that the permit is good for 2 years with a one-time 12-month extension. And the language that supports that chart says it's good for 1 year with the option to extend one time for 12 months. Same thing for the development design review major site plan. It says 24 months with the option for a one-time 12-month extension. And if you go to section 982, where that's discussed, it says,
One eighty-nine. 189. Yeah. 189 was the minor site plan. Well, look at, I'll show you two other ones. If you'll go further down where it says preliminary plat. So the preliminary plat, which is further discussed in section 7.5.4, and that can be found on page 142. I know that. The chart reflects a 24-month permit approval period with 12 months one-time extension. But if you go to page 142, where it discusses that, it says a preliminary plat approval is in full force and effect for a period of 2 years from the date of approval. Approval will automatically expire at the end of 2 years unless an applicant formally requests an 18-month extension from the planning commission prior to termination or submits a completed final draft. So in the chart, it says that they have the option for a one-time 12-month extension, but in the language that supports that, it says they have an option to extend for 18 months.
That's definitely.
Same.
You brought that.
Yep, same thing for the final plat. You can find the final plat in the chart on page 166. You can find the language that supports that on page 147. And there's an inconsistency in the permit validity time and extension. And I think that if that's not corrected, then that definitely needs to be consistent with the chart. So I'm going to wrap mine up there because those were the biggest issues for me. And I apologize if some of that was already addressed in some of the, but again, it's kind of hard. I just want to make sure that we're being thorough, and I appreciate all the work that went into this because I know you guys spent a lot of time. I tried to watch all of those meetings to make sure I did have context, and these are just some of the things that I could benefit from having clarification on. And in the moment of silence, I'll say that in the chart, we can, since you made the change from administrator to ministerial, maybe adding in the definition of ministerial.
I have a couple of anybody else, if any of the council members do, but, on the amendments, proposed amendments, a lot of these are off kilter. Copy that I got, what I thought was a clean copy, the very front. If you go to page 5, 7.5.3, I hereby make a motion, and if you go down to the third one, it looks like 7.3, excuse me, 7.5.3 B1, then you've got I. It should be letters.
Yeah, we're gonna have to change, the lettering is all changed in the clean.
Gotcha.
So Mike and I were planning to get with Kurt to go over all that numbering is, the clean copy has the correct numbering. Some of these motion
Yeah.
references are to the red line version.
A couple of them, I think,
And that was changed between that too, so I just need to say that before we get further.
yeah, there are quite a few of them I made notes on.
Yeah.
So we try to make some relative to comments that we got
Sure.
from.
I just want to make sure when we do the amendments that we're doing it correctly and properly.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah. All right, let's go to council.
I just had a couple of things I want to thank you from Councilman Scaletti. I do feel that a 1 mile radius for a TIA would be justifiable for all the building going on and everything. I really think we need a one mile, not a half a mile. Another thing, going back to the gates, private or gates for developments. If the development owns the road, I think it should be, personally, I think it should be allowed, but if it's like a development sort of like Battery Shores, for instance, or Battery Point or something like that, where or Battery Shores, the city owns the roads, no, that should not be a gated community. But if, do y'all own the roads over in Live Oaks? Okay, then I think the option really should be given, and it's up to the development. That's just my personal view.
So one point of clarification there, is we
Yeah.
were talking about these gated communities.
Yes, sir.
It's kind of unclear to me. I think when the planning commission was looking at the whole question of gated communities, we were looking at it in the instance of somebody building a new community. What you seem to be implying, and I just want to make sure what you're talking about is whether or not somebody, or a group of people can decide they want to create a gated. Is that what you're saying?
Well, if somebody's already got a community, are they grandfathered in that they could build? I mean, that's what the question is.
But I understand that when we wrote that language, I think what we had in mind was somebody who was doing something new from the ground up.
Okay,
But if you want to do something different, I think it's important to be clear exactly what it is, because Councilman Scalati's comments on that point were kind of a thing for me, because that's not what I'm not saying what we should do one way or the other. I just think we ought to be clear. Are you trying to give certain neighborhoods the ability to gate streets?
if it's a privately owned street, a group, a neighborhood privately owned streets, I feel like they should have the option to gate it if they choose to.
Are there any place in the city that's not already a gated community where there are private streets?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm different. No, have to be.
Sound
That are
better.
private ones, yeah, that are not.
So they,
But back to your comment, though, currently we're talking about new communities being gated,
Right.
not communities that already exist. So that's a whole different discussion. It's not really addressed.
Right. So I guess. Does that mean, and if we don't know now, that's fine. I always feel like I don't know is a great answer, but more honest answer than a lot of people will give. So does that mean that the council is open to the idea of a new community that would be built from the ground up? Being to have people have the option of gated?
No, I feel that, the ones that are already built should be grandfathered in. That's what I'm saying.
When you say grandfathered in,
If they want a community that's already there, that doesn't have a gate, they should have the option to put one in if they want to.
Are the roads in the community owned by the community?
If they're owned by the community,
Owned by
yeah.
the community and they exist, then you want, and they should be able to put a gate.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I think going back and I think correct me, and Libby, you might remember too, I think that there was a conscious effort not to have any more gated communities in Beaufort.
I'll share my personal perspective and I'll, full disclosure, I live in a gated community. Yeah, I say that because I want to get the laughter out first. But I think what gated, there's a reason there. We're getting kind of in the weeds here, but you have to make some choices. We wanted to get on the water. That's where we could afford, and it was a tough decision, but we decided to do it. Well, what I think, and it happens with gated communities, you kind of create islands within the community. And my community, I'm just speaking one person, Mitch Mitchell, I'm not speaking for Islands of Beaufort, please know that. Is that I think you start operating within your little community. Because everything you do in there is kind of governed by the association. And it also creates a sense of exclusivity too. In that you drive by and you can't come in, right? And I think overall for the city, when we think of our city, do we want a lot of little islands within the city that's all kind of shut out, and then you have the people who can't afford to be in those communities feeling that I don't belong? So that's just my personal perspective on gated communities. I understand that the concern about security, but I think we have a police force that is hired and being paid to protect the city. And we've had a recent case where crime was getting kind of out of hand, and I think we've kind of gotten that tampered down again. So I think there are ways to deal with this without creating lots of little spaces that shuts people out within our city. That's just Mitch Mitchell speaking, one person. I'm not speaking for anyone else except Mitch Mitchell.
I think historically, the idea of the gated communities within the city also had a lot to do with the connectivity of the roadways and keeping the grids open. And that's what a lot of the participants in earlier charrettes discussed in creating gated communities within the city. It blocks the connectivity of the grid network and the roadways. It was not so much a security exclusivity. It was more keeping the general grids and the general roadways open and unobstructed by gates.
And if we go under the assumption that this is applying to new things, not what's existing, then Islands of Beaufort's a non-conforming use, I guess, legal non. Because it's grandfathered. Am I correct? I think we're talking about new gated from the ground up communities. So council's got to kind of decide what direction we want to go. Is that what we want? That's what
I don't think there should be new gated communities.
I agree.
I'll say that on top now. The other issue which I addressed in my comments, I know that's a different issue. But I don't think they should be new gated.
From the ground up, I would agree. No new gated communities. It's just communities that are there, that they own the roads, that they have the right to fill up the gate if they want to. That's the question.
So if I'm hearing Councilor Planning Commission, your recommendation would be something language to say what is applies to new development.
that was the assumption I was thinking.
We need to make a revision.
Yes, it should be.
Hear this again.
I'm good with that new developments, yes.
And then we should address the other one.
Yes.
Excuse me. If I said you could address the other one, what do you mean by that? I mean,
Well, I don't think we have language now, correct me if I'm wrong, that talks about your issue where you wanted to gate an existing community.
right,
So that's not part of the ordinance that we're addressing
I
now.
think that's what you're, that's what I was clarifying. It sounds like you want us to look at this language that would make it clear that this is.
That this is only for new development.
Only
correct?
right, I just wanted to.
Maybe send this back to the planning commission. Make that check.
Right.
So,
Is that the assumption y'all are working under when you got to this?
Yes.
It was certainly mine. That's why I raised the question, it was certainly mine.
Okay, well, I didn't.
And what was that?
You meant, but I'm good with that.
Yeah, I don't think we ever considered, in any way an existing community putting up a gate. That was not.
Okay, I took it as any,
I'm not expressing any opinion one way or the other. I'm just trying to say that's.
No,
what
I
we
appreciate
have.
it.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, I don't believe it's addressed anywhere in the building.
No, it's not.
And that's why I said that would be something we do that we'd have to address later on.
Tony, you want to let, is it Mr. Trask?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Hey, Graham Trask. First of all, I do want to congratulate Mike, Tomey, and the entire planning board, as well as Kurt and the city's group in where they have gotten to. I've got some conceptual questions that I'd just like to walk through more from understanding as opposed to changing as a landowner. But I do have one fundamental question. This has received first reading. What is this discussion? How is that going to impact second reading? Where do we go from here with all these suggested changes? Can it come back up for second reading in August, or has this now stalled the process?
We come back in August. If they have enough time to address it.
And so you would address things with amendments, is that right?
That's how we done.
Okay.
Right,
Okay, fair enough. Could we refer to 9.1.4, that table that Councilman Scaletti talked through, and go to the subdivision review? And this is just more for understanding. So we've got the sketch plan, which once approved is valid for 12 months, and then it can be renewed for 1 month. That's 24 months. Then, Kurt, I'm really pointing to you. During that 24 months, they then must go to preliminary plat. Is that right? If they don't, they have to start over.
that's the way it's written.
That's on page 166.
Sorry, that's the way it's written. I didn't hear you.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. And so then likewise, preliminary plat, they'll have 36 months once they get the preliminary plat approval to then go to final plat. And then from there, again, another 36 months that they then need to apply for a building permit. Is that right?
Well, yeah, just permits in general.
Okay. And then, so within that, once they have that final plat, 36 months, they got to go to a project permit, which is back up in 9.5. And that permit is valid for 6 months. Is there a requirement to finish the project? Do they need to finish the project within the final plat period? When do they have to finish the project?
Within the final plat period?
I think
That's my question. I mean, when does a developer have to finish the project, or can they not finish the project?
Sure.
With the final plat, you can provide the surety, right? Essentially, we're not going to allow we're not gonna allow COs or permits to be issued until infrastructure is in. You can bond all the infrastructure, right? But we're not gonna release a permit until you actually complete the infrastructure. And in the case where, let's say you have a final plat and maybe there was an economic downturn, this happened in 2008, and, you know, what should happen is that, let's say there's 20 lots left, but they only built roads to 3 lots, you know. Really what that would mean is the road would kind of end there, and we wouldn't have issued permits for any of those lots until they finished the infrastructure, and then we would call the bond. And theoretically, the city would have eventually finished the infrastructure, for those remaining lots. That's what.
Okay,
But, yeah, I mean, it's kind of, you know, I think it's really. Your final plat's good for this amount of time, maybe the better way to think about it is it's good for you to provide a surety for improvements for that amount of time. That makes sense. You
it
got
does
three-
make sense.
got
It
3
does
years,
make,
put up all that money, or after that 3 years, then this whole big process that you got sketch plan preliminary. Final for would end and you've lost your vested right.
sorry, say that one more time.
And then you would have lost your vested right, you need to go back to the beginning.
Once the surety was called on?
No, I'm stating, I think the 3 year, the way to maybe best state the final plat is you got basically 3 years to pull the surety. Right. To actually create the lots and record the plat. Maybe that's the best way to say it. think that's
Well, I
what's-
don't know, but
You got a
what the
3
ci- again, it's important to think about this because we have this situation. And I want to move to the historic district now. So what happens in the historic district if we go to 910.2? So I just want you to keep what I just said in mind. If we go to 9.10.2.
Or in the current, or the proposed.
In the current proposed red line.
99.
Local
199.
designation, I think we removed that, actually.
910, Beaufort Historic District Certificate of Appropriateness, if we could go there. It's
You
page
want-
197. So if we go down to the chart on under 2, under major. So this is the process. Are there any time constraints on going from conceptual, preliminary, and final? There used to be. Are there any now?
The 9.10, we had a lot of discussion, there was a recommendation, but it's not move forward with this set of regulations. I think we were going to have future discussion on it.
Oh, so this is not part of what is in front of council to approve?
That was the first thing the planning commission and yes, feel free to.
Help him out.
Spent a lot of time on, and that, I think it had added a concept and preliminary and final process, if you all remember. But that was not part of this specific. I don't think it moved forward with council, so it wasn't part of this package.
You're saying any of the historic stuff?
Yeah, any of the historic stuff, except you just, they made a few tiny little like minor changes just to scribbling.
Okay.
The code that you can see, just approval of, we just put historic districts were made. And we got rid of that table, and that's it. We didn't make any substantive or.
Because we're coming back on that.
We're coming back on that, and I think that's scheduled for.
Okay, so what you're saying is you
Scheduled for.
okay, so what you're saying is that there's going to be more discussion on this because again, we can find ourselves in a situation where somebody
So I
puts,
think, yeah, that'll be, I think, broad. Yeah, I mean, obviously for the final plot, it'd be kind of rare for someone to do a major subdivision in the historic district, but obviously they do a particularly appropriate. This final plot's for a major it's multiple lots, it's a sale and day house. I suppose
Okay. Okay, I got it. So what you're saying, Kurt, and again, this situation does exist currently in the historic district, is the historic, that's a different section that you're not considering right now. Is that right?
there's no substantive changes to that section, right?
And what section is that?
That's the COA and the, was it 9.9 and 9.10?
Okay,
Where there's been a lot of discussion.
There's a lot of discussion,
But we're
but
coming,
I think we're.
okay, fair enough, fair enough. So could we go back to that chart that we talked about? And again, I'm sorry to be a little bit pedantic on this, but this is the world we're living in right now. So I just want to be very precise so if you go to historic preservation, you now have a certificate of appropriateness, which is 24 months and can be extended. The proposed is 3 times. Is that right, Kurt?
That's right. That's what was.
Okay. Okay. So what does that mean? Does that mean the building needs to be built by then, or that within 5 years, the applicant who has the certificate of appropriateness needs to apply for a building permit? What is it?
I think it's similar to the final plat. It doesn't mean it has to be built. It means they have to submit a building permit, which requires a certificate of appropriateness. They've met all the conditions of either a minor certificate of appropriateness or a major. Let's say the HRB said, you had to do specific windows and columns, et cetera. That was a condition. So when you submit your building permit, we would verify that was all done. And so, yeah, does that make sense? So you have that
Well, let's work to a practical
5
example.
years to submit a building permit that meets the certificate of appropriateness.
Fair enough. So let's just assume we're under the new code. The building that I got a certificate of appropriateness a year ago was approved. I've got 24 months, and then I've got another 3 years that I can extend that certificate of appropriateness before I need to get a building permit. And as long as I do that, I get a building permit, right? Within the 5 years.
That's
Now,
right. Like,
okay, so once I get that building permit, how long is the building permit valid for? 6 months, it says.
6 months, but it can be extended based on any progress, any meaningful progress, or, the building official can extend it for, I guess, cause.
So it's an arbitrary extension by the building inspector, is that right?
I wouldn't say so. No, it's in the building code that, that's approved by almost every community, in one version or another, but all that language is building the IRC, or the IBC, right? That's done by the International Code Council. But we do have a 6-month period, but that 6-month period is the same as the IBC and the IRC.
And I don't think it becomes arbitrary simply because an official has the ability to make a decision. I think arbitrary is the wrong word, and I think as Kurt has explained it, I think it's a normal way that business in this regard is done.
It has to meet the standards to renew a building permit. Is in both of the two international code, the IRC and the IBC. The standards are there that you have to meet. Typically, you have to have some progress in 6 months to continue to renew it, or, there's a section in those codes that state what you need to do to extend it, no action.
Okay, so it's standardized. Okay, fair enough.
Standardized. They're not Buford codes, they're, codes that are adopted in almost every community.
Okay, I'll look at that. So for a big project downtown, the code does not require a TIA. Is that right?
I don't know that I could say that for sure, but, certain uses could require a TIA.
Well, I think the proposal in here is that overlay districts would be exempt.
Oh, yeah, you're right, but that's Bladen Street.
Bladen Street, yeah.
No, it's bounded by Calhoun, Carteret, Bay Street, and Rebo Road.
Isn't there a Bladen overlay and redevelopment district downtown?
There it is.
Yeah, so then that would be exempt to, so I guess certain parts of downtown.
But what about in the middle of downtown? If you put just,
You put a fast food restaurant, is that?
you put a 70-room hotel. Do you need a TIA?
If it triggers it, if it triggers 50 trips. Or more on a peak hour, you have to, yes.
Part of the package for a site plan.
You have to, and it's just complicated because, most of those uses are not allowed in the historic zoning, but yes, the hotel would be one that could potentially trigger a TI.
Okay. And I didn't see anything about archaeological downtown. Has that been taken out or?
Addressed it yet?
That's in chapter 8.
It actually was in 7.5.5, there was the reference to it, yeah.
But it's in chapter 8 and they haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. I've only got one or two more here, guys. Thanks for sticking with me. 910.2.3A, 910.3.
What page?
Yeah, let me get there and I'll tell you. Hold on. 10.
Back to that historic.
910.2.
Back in the storage district.
That's the sections that we're gonna be working on later.
Oh, okay, because you have made some changes. Applicability, the HRB shall have the authority to authorize a design exception from any applicable standard set forth in Article 2, except for Section 2.6 height and Section 2.74 air installation. So where before there was a limit on what they could do, now they're totally unlimited. So one thing that is concerning here is not only height, but width, which gets to mass and scale. And so as a major developer in the historic district that wants to maintain its character, that's a concern. Front footage is what I'm talking about.
You're gonna have to correct. For all of us, I was under the impression, I don't know what yours is, Mike, that we were gonna leave all of the changes to the historic out for now, that we're. No changes. And we've been meeting over the last, a smaller group over the last couple of months about some larger issues in the historic district, and we were gonna come back with the historic district changes separate from all of this. Is that why they're gonna do that?
Okay, that's fair enough. That's a good answer. And then finally,
Changes.
I don't think we intend.
They weren't intended to be.
so are those changes going to be changed that you've crossed out, or it's just not changed?
Let me check, because this was actually related to the design exception, and that's why they're in there.
Well, the final analysis, what's gonna be voted on is
Discussion
the
that
clean
they could
version,
get
not
better.
a line version anyway. And so, it really what the question is what's in the clean version. I don't know whether.
I'm gonna look, but I think that was actually touched because there was a lot of consideration from some of the attorneys on, if I remember, this is probably like 12 meetings ago. Stated variance, the HRB should grant a variance.
Well,
and that's why it was changed, because I think it's a feeling that of the original code. They didn't have the power to grant a variance, they had the power to meet.
Right.
That was the only real change.
But to me, it's concerning that they have no boundaries whatsoever.
Well, I think we can mark that in, again, there was no intention to change any of that, and I think that was the reason for it, so.
Okay. Okay.
We set our sessions when they come up.
But that was the reason, and I think it was
Yeah,
because
I will.
it's statutorily, it says variance.
And then the last, sorry, go ahead.
So sorry, go ahead.
And then the last thing is on demolition. Where does demolition stand?
That was in the same future
set of things that we were gonna come back to the council, planning commission.
We're making no changes on that for now, was where the planning commission stood on it, because we understood that we needed to consider all of that more. Am I correct about that? Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that was it. Thank you very much.
Really quick, looking at this chart, where is the minor subdivision review on that? I mean, I think it's clear to me when I'm reading it that you have the subdivision review section, and then you have sketch plan, then preliminary plat, final plat, and sketch plan is required for all major development. But where is the minor subdivision review in the chart?
I think we took it out, we took that out. When you go to the final clean copy version, you'll see that it's gone.
Okay, so what was the thought of removing it opposed to just having it in here, even if it's the administrative review or whatever? What would be the justification for removing it from the chart altogether?
Okay.
I believe because I didn't need to go through any specific public process, but perhaps it's better to put it back in there just to provide.
I would think, I mean, there's others that wouldn't go through any public process as well that are listed in here. And, you know, if you're looking at this and you're trying to determine, you know, maybe where you would go to find section for minor.
I think the minor one was just, if you go back to the minor requirements, it was just a final plat that would apply to it.
I don't think it was ever in the code, and that was, yeah, that was the minor site plan, wasn't a minor subdivision.
I see the minor site plan in the chart for the design review, but I don't see the minor subdivision.
Yeah, I don't know that it ever was,
It's in the old chart, and in fact, I think
it
know
was. Well, I think that's something that we could add, but I don't think we heard anything, say administrative.
Okay, just a note, I was looking, I didn't see it on there. And then another question that maybe previously for you guys, I was looking for it and couldn't find it, but on page 170 where it says section 9.1.6, decision based on public hearing. That used to be that a decision shall be made by the appropriate review body within 60 days of the close of the required public hearing. And it's left blank, and I would assume that it got moved somewhere, but I had trouble finding it. Would it move somewhere?
I'm sorry.
As page 170, 9.1.6, decision based on public hearing. So if there's a decision made, is there a time frame by which?
I think, I have to find it. I think our thinking is that if we don't decide at the date of the hearing, we're just continuing the hearing.
Okay.
We're not, so we either decide when we're done or we continue the hearing. And we'll either continue a hearing where we don't take additional testimony or whether we do, but we'd be specific about that. But it's not one of these things where you close it, you just never vote on it.
Okay.
So,
And also.
So the thinking was scratching because it really didn't.
so we have to make a decision after we're done hearing all the testimony, or otherwise we continue it.
Okay.
Also, because there were multiple instances. Both when the DRB existed, planning commission where it's gone way over 60 days, projects. To get more approval.
But because those were combined, we don't have that concern right now.
Well, you know, they've been tabled and, you know, a lot of past projects for additional information from the applicant that took, you know, longer than 60 days. Let's say.
So we've had some instances just.
We don't want them to be approved by ordinance. Because.
Okay.
I'm gonna take that one.
Gotcha.
So we've had some situations where we just didn't have adequate information to make a final decision. And so we've said, listen, will you agree to just continue this, or do you want us to vote today? And in those instances, they've always said, well, yeah, I'll agree to continue this.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna have you vote with inadequate information, because you're probably not voting the way I want. So that's the idea there.
And then one other thing, and this is on page 200, I think this was already in the code, but just a question. Again, page 200, under guidance, standards, maintenance of consent policies. The last bullet, number 6, it says, any special area policies adopted by the HRB. Do they have the ability to adopt policies or special area?
A good question. I think that's in the current code and we just didn't really consider it, so.
It's in the current, I just didn't know,
Yeah.
maybe doesn't even need to be there, because I don't know that they have the.
Well, that goes back to that whole thing, are they even gonna, are we even gonna be there, are we even expecting a vote on anything related to the historic section? My understanding as a planning commission was we had discussed those things internally. We had come up with our proposed changes. We were told that council either didn't like them or wanted more changes. And so what we were internally discussing, and which was sort of the genesis of that whole committee that got set up, started meeting, was we had more work to do. And so no changes were gonna be made to the historic section until that committee completed its work and got back to the planning commission for further review.
There's a lot of issues the special committee is dealing with. As an example, Erie property, we all know different things that have to be dealt with there. And the community itself. So dealing with the whole section, especially demolition, becomes a little more complicated, as well as sensitive to everybody and trying to preserve the community. So special committee has been set up to try and hear the voices of various different entities as to how to put that back together to make it work and enforceable, because nothing that we have in the current code has been enforceable for 20 or 30 years.
Is that special committee made up of members from planning commission and HRB?
Yes,
Okay.
and the what's that group?
Yeah, the Freeman's are.
Freeman's and the HPN. Yeah, so when we first sat down, I was under the impression, I think Mike was, that we were gonna get some comments to the code sections, and we'd be, meeting or two, and we'd be done with that. But it kind of opened it up to everything, and we started talking about much more broadly, about a whole variety of issues relating to the historic and the Freedmen's Arts District. And so instead of being like a 2-hour meeting or 2 2-hour meetings, I think it ended up being like, half dozen 4-hour meetings. And I think that we finally put something together that was to be sent to the city council, right, and just hasn't taken it up yet. And that wasn't even the final step in the process. That was sort of a preliminary step. Is that right, Kurt?
Well, if you remember at your retreat, it was brought up then. And at the retreat, I stated that we'd get together with the historic design review board and get together and put something together that made the most sense. That's what generated this other committee. So it's been going on for quite a while. We've had a lot of meetings. I think the discussions have been really very good, very fruitful. And we need to come up with something that you all can enforce that is appropriate for the community.
Now, I think at one time, Mr. Holman, there was a draft that you had from City of Columbia or something, is that right?
The infamous Holman draft.
Yeah,
That had to do with demolitions.
is that still on the table at all, or is that has it just been rolled into part of the discussion?
We haven't even gotten to the demolition discussion with the
Right.
committee
We're
yet.
still doing it.
So it's moving a little slowly, okay?
Regarding if this goes to second reading in August, I think we can see here today that there is considerable version confusion going on. And this is something that we, as the planning commission, have struggled with from the beginning. And I think there's confusion about what exactly was agreed to at first reading and what would be up for a vote at second reading. And I would suggest that a version be prepared that excludes, doesn't even have it in the packet, any of this historic district stuff. It should just be not in there. And also suggest that in reviewing it, I find these red line versions extremely difficult to read. And there's a lot of mistakes in them and they're hard to see. So I would suggest that council members look at the clean copy And if there's something that seems not right, then refer to the red line version. To if there's an explanation, I think, and then when you're talking about it at the meeting, I also think that you should use a clean version. For purposes of any vote or any further modifications. That's just my.
Go ahead. Okay, yeah. Yeah. All right, Tony, if you got someone? I do. Mr. Trask?
Thank you. I left two things out and I appreciate you tolerating hearing me again. One is the TIA. There was some discussion on half versus a mile. And again, this question is for Kurt, if in the planning committee, by all means, chime in. You're wanting that right now is written that the TIA take into consideration a half-mile radius. Is that right?
Yes.
Except for if it's approved but not, or permitted but unbuilt developments of a mile. Is the way that it currently reads.
Well, has anybody explored what that might cost? Because I don't know, and some of my property is impacted. I think it's a good idea. I just don't know what it might cost to do that in a TIA. And do we know? I'm trying to bring this to practicality.
Well, a TIA looks at intersections. That's what it's all about. It's always about intersections. So it depends how many intersections are within the distance.
So, well, talk me through that. So how is a half mile going to be any different than a mile if I'm doing an intersection?
Might be more than a mile.
Now, often they use the county or the state, often does counts that are pretty accurate on all the major roads that are within a time frame that works, so.
Right, but my experience is they sit on the corner where the development is going to go and they take car counts.
Right.
Okay, so what does a half mile versus a mile mean to that is my question.
Well, more than the multiple intersections can easily be impacted by by a new development. Okay, and a half mile or a mile is actually, sort of arbitrary. My experience, and a lot of it with developments over a long career, is that it's the and we don't have an engineering section, but it's somebody like in our case here, Kurt would have to say, these are the intersections that are impacted, and you really need to look at these intersections. I think we just put in a distance in there because we discussed it, and the sense was it should be beyond just the intersection where you have access to the property.
Got it. Okay. And Mike, tell me back to the demolition situation. It seems to me it would be pretty easy to put a limit on the time frame for demolitions and not stop this whole process, this now very complicated process, which either intentionally or not intentionally has been created. Isn't that reasonable? I mean, right now I'm holding a demolition permit that never expires. And that's the whole issue. Why can't you at least put an interim demolition sunset in and then go back and deal with all these quote unquote stakeholders that have been created?
Well, I totally agree. We have to have sunsets, and we could put something temporary in there. We'll have to see what the board wants to do, but I totally agree. We've got to have those sunsets, and that's the problem that we've had up until now. The problem with putting a sunset in is how do you enforce it? And that's one of the big issues we've been trying to deal with.
So you don't have advice on how to enforce it? Isn't it just simply send the code guy out there and sorry, you can't do it? Or
you can do that, but is something that actually happened. And if you're talking about a taking of a property, how is that going to get done? I think there's just a lot of issues around that we're trying to deal with right now and come up with a way that they can be dealt with.
okay. And then are those meetings open to the public?
Yes.
They are, so they're advertised and they're open to the public and all that sort of stuff.
There's been a hiatus on those right now. We're looking for an official adoption of that special committee from city council. I think that's coming up.
Okay.
August.
19th will be a work session with the city council.
Yeah, and so then those definitely are advertised.
Yeah, okay. Because it sounds like a lot of this stuff has been done behind closed doors without stakeholders. It's just I'm not accusing, I'm
No, I would, no, there hasn't been any discussion at all, just of, demolition.
Okay.
All the discussion was from the planning commission last year, and they made their recommendation. That's
Okay, fair enough.
Right. Say that.
Thank you.
In the interest of time, I'd like Kurt and Mike, if you don't mind, y'all go through what the chamber presented, the edits that y'all did there, so that we can come up with a clean copy that we can, have some amendments to vote on at our next meeting, if that's possible to do it.
I think is that the plan to maybe send this back to the planning commission for which meeting next week. Maybe go over, I think Councilman Scaletti had a lot of excellent comments. We can incorporate into this.
Well, and also, Mr. Bartemorfer and Mr. Tony have sort of taken the lead as a subcommittee within the planning commission to coordinate this process. So I think we should be able to accomplish something at our next meeting.
Yeah, I think, a lot of the changes are just using the proper words and punctuations and capitalizations, things like that. There's a few things in here that are more than that. And there may be a couple of issues that we don't agree with the comments that we've been given.
And they were working on the earlier red line draft, and when we did the final draft, for example, the formatting all changed, so a lot of the little Roman numeral twos became little b's, things of that kind, but we made one go through already, or Mike, I did, and we're gonna do another one here with.
We've done the go through based on what they were working with, so we didn't change it up so that they could understand what it is. I'd be more than happy to go through each of our comments here. I know they're the comments of the things that we think can be changed at this point, or we can give this document to them to look at if they want. But if they want to make comments at this meeting related to specific issues in here, we probably have to go through the comments and let them make specific, just have a discussion about some specific items.
Megan is not here to speak on behalf of the chamber. She bound.
Oh, well.
It sounded like in the comments made today, there was nothing actually specifically pointed to, but it sounded like the underlying concern was the economics of it. Is it gonna make development more expensive and unreasonably more expensive? But I feel like some of the changes that we're seeing here, in fact, many of them are exactly in line with not only council's concerns, but the community we represent, their concerns, which is the tree canopy coverage and the traffic impact studies being required and more tightened up. So I think a lot of the issues are exactly in line with,
Well, the planning commission is looking at it from the standpoint of what's in the best interest of this community.
Right.
And so as we address all these issues, we're not looking at things that make it less expensive for a developer to come in and do something. We're looking at maintaining the integrity of the community as the development happens, working with the developer to do these things. So we may have some disagreements on a couple of things in here, but the majority doesn't get into that kind of detail.
Right, and my specific concern in regards to the predictability is just that, is having somebody be able to read it and say, okay, this is what's required of me, and if it's stringent requirement, that's fine, because I feel like we need to do that in order to protect what we have, but at the same time, at least I'd like somebody to be able to read it and understand exactly what is required of them, and there not be question marks on what that might look like. And so clearing up some of those gray areas, I feel like is important because there were several of them. We did talk about the within a mile, and there seemed to be a little confusion, so I want to just make sure that was an intentional in here, but on page 120, it says incorporation of all traffic impact analysis studies and trip generation from approved developments or vested unbuilt developments within mile radius at the time of proposal. Now, that's the only place where it talks about a mile. Everything else is a half mile. So was that an intentional decision that was made within a mile, or is the word half missing from there?
Well, let me tell you a little bit of background behind all of that. And that is, if I started looking across the county, the city, and the town, and dealing with issues as I work with the county on certain boards and things, is that we have so much development going on. We've got 3,000 to 5,000 new units coming online. And a lot of that, when you're taking a look at a specific subdivision as at a point in our community, you have to go out farther to see what the overall impact of that is, because when those units come online, you're going to have a much greater impact on the road systems and the intersections. So the intent and the purpose was to try and put together information that would allow a traffic engineer to understand what the future impact is based on what we're approving for developments. One of the things I would like to see happen is get a GIS system done where we have input from the city, the town, and the county that shows exactly where our subdivisions are that are either applying for permits, actually permitted, or haven't come online yet, but and are still out there, so that we could see what those population areas are and their impacts on those particular roads, and whether or not that's going to have an impact on a future subdivision that we're currently reviewing. The problem that I've had is that our board, when we take a look at this, we're looking at a very small confined area and not taking into account, and sometimes we don't even know. That's why I'd really like to see an emphasis put on just getting a GIS map, which should be not really complicated, because you can go to each of the planning commissions for each of our municipalities and just plot that on a GIS map, and then just kind of keep that up. And the intent would be that that GIS map is available for every planned subdivision that comes to the table for any of us.
As a traffic engineer, what are they basing allowing a saying, okay, it's gonna put this many cars on, what's the capacity of the arterial routes? Because that's the thing that I'm concerned about. You can do half mile, you can do a mile, doesn't matter, 170, whether it's county, Fort Walton, or Beaufort, sooner or later, it's gonna be gridlock. And,
The way these things work, the way that traffic impact assessments work, again, they're capacity analysis for intersections. So the whole idea is that, you know, you're trying to make sure that traffic keeps moving. I mean, this is the way things are analyzed across the country. It isn't how much traffic is on the road, it's whether it moves through the intersections in one signal. So the idea is, it might, you know, as communities grow, yeah, there's gonna be ever more traffic on the roads. There's no avoiding that. So what you try to do is make sure that you don't approve new developments that cause gridlock, and gridlock is when you can't get through an intersection anymore. And as a result of those studies, you know, it may sometimes come down to the fact that we just have to turn something down, but it may be that there are various modifications that can be, you know, the typical things that a traffic impact study looks at are signal timing, you know, add more, you know, green time to the arterial and less to the to the cross street. Turning lanes, you know, and it's usually left, it's always left turns that it's all about, whether you're turning left out of a development or turning in. So do we have to add new, turning lanes, stacking lanes and set things of that kind? So, you know, that's what we're always looking at, and that's what the traffic impact assessments are looking at. It's not the total volume of traffic on the road, it's the total capacity of an intersection, and they're graded on the basis of delays. So there's usually there's a number in there, which is the seconds of delay. And then those seconds of delay per the Institute of Traffic Engineer standards are given grades, A, B, C, D, E, and F. Coming into this whole thing, your development code here said that we shoot for a level of service D. Where I came from, we considered a level of service D as a passing grade. I mean, we only looked at E's and F's. And a lot of times, because we were in a major metropolitan area, we even approved F's because it was like, so many things are F, we'll have no growth and development if we. But here, we didn't change that standard. It's a level of service D. And so it makes it a little bit easier to turn things down if the development through signal timing and turn lanes and things like that can achieve a level of service D. So that's what you all and what we're looking at is, does the traffic keep moving? Not really how much traffic is all developed.
Those turning lanes you're talking about, certain roads, that you can't do that because there's nowhere to put that road. The other thing is, there's so many curb cuts along a lot of these arterial things that stop and slow traffic and just.
So the new developments, you know, in the old days, everybody got a curb cut for, you know, every single 1 acre lot development there was, and that's part of what you're dealing with now. So, I mean, it may be that on some of these developments, I mean, what you try to do in a traffic impact study is mitigate the impacts so that you can get it to that level of service D, but if you can't mitigate the impacts because there's no place to put turn lanes or whatever, then the answer is gonna start being no on some of the development, you know, just from the standpoint of the traffic impact study alone. That's why it was so important to us, and one of the big changes, last thing I'll say on that is we wanted to make sure that TIAs were required in more circumstances and that they were reviewed by the planning commission. When I was on the planning commission under my, the last time, the planning director didn't want us to ever get a TIA and didn't want us to look at it because he said we weren't competent to do so. Well, we've taken a different viewpoint, is that that's our responsibility, is if we don't know how they work, then we need to figure out how they work. We can give you a recommendation in that regard.
And to some degree, Graham is right. There is a difference between looking at what the road capacity is. We're not even dealing with road capacities, but we are approving major subdivisions. And we've got to understand what those new subdivisions are. And right now, if you do a TIA on a particular intersection, you're not going to get the same results as you would if all of those subdivisions that are in that same area are actually operational. But then that goes back to road capacity, and I think we need to be looking at what can we do for road capacity, and obviously we're impacting road capacity because we're approving developments.
Well, let me just hitchhike on that just for 1 second. Is one thing we've also tried to assure with this is that when a new development, takes its, you take actual counts of what's on the road, but you use the ITE manual for predicting trip generation from a new development. And so we try to make sure that as we analyze, as a new TIA is done, it takes into account not just the traffic that's on the road, but the traffic that's been approved in a new development that isn't built yet. So you're always building on top of what was previously approved. And that's part of the trick in reviewing these things, is to make sure that they don't leave out a development just because it wasn't built yet. You have to take into account as though it's built.
And that's what you captured very well here.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to the requirement for any jurisdiction, including the town of Port Royal and the county of Beaufort.
Yeah, that's outside.
We're trying to capture.
You're gonna capture.
Still like that GIS.
The other thing that it dovetails with is the sunsetting of the permits, and the approvals, because now the, the window for building is extremely long, and it's very important for us to shorten that and put a definite limit on it, because it's true that some developments just never get built. But if you have to take
Right,
indefinite approvals
Right.
into account, then you are talking about expense and really just speculation.
So one thing to keep in mind, I was at a statewide conference with heads of from DOT. And with new developments, they're doing everything they can to eliminate left turns. You'll see it out there, like at the Cross Creek area and the Buford Station. Everybody's fussing about that. They're doing medians, they're doing roundabouts and traffic circles. They found it's like 75% of the accidents are like from left turns. And they're trying to eliminate left turns everywhere they can. So new development, you're gonna start seeing that, a lot more of it
Exactly.
from DOT. I'm just warning you.
Ms. Kim, back to your comment, was that the context behind why the changes in the permit validity extensions from 5 times to 1 time? Because I don't know what the appropriate time would be, but is that the context behind that change?
Well, yeah, that was part of it. The other was that I think under the original code, you could start your sketch plan and not even have to do a major development under that same sketch plan for 10, 12 years or something. And we've cut it down. Now it's like 7 or 8 years, which is still an awful long time.
All about predictability.
And by the time you get even 4, 5, 6 years from the time you apply and get approved for a plan, everything in this community changes. I mean, look where we were 5 years ago, where we are now. Totally different.
Can I ask this? And I know that the historic preservation portion of the conversation may be off the table because that has further review, but what was the context behind reducing the opportunity to extend, say, the sketch plan preliminary and final only 1 time, whereas in the historic preservation, it went down from 5 to 3?
I think that was more the predictability of what you're trying to accomplish. And funding for that and taking into account that probably isn't a major subdivision, so dealing with smaller entities.
Yeah, but you have more time.
We also have bigger challenges often in the historic district when you're trying to accomplish a project that you don't have in other parts of the city.
Okay, and that's where my mind was, is maybe there's other challenges that are created in the historic preservation district that would require or make it better to have the opportunity to extend up to 3 times, but I didn't know what that was the thought or not.
how do we want to wrap this up? We don't want to keep everybody here all afternoon. Is that board meeting?
Yeah, so if I could just get direction. Because I think some of this stems from the fact that we're using a red line copy that we're using for redlining in the meeting. Right. And so
Go
that
back
copy,
going forward.
I think probably deserves a lot of formatting, and that's, but thinking of doing that, but and you got the old red line and we can't change that, but the clean copy to Ms. McCann's point, it's kind of has been formatted, so still there are some, Councilman Scaletti has made, I think some good comments of things that were kind of missed as well, or need to be corrected. How do you wish, do you want to send that back to the planning commission next week for them to take a formal recommendation? And then send you just motions based on that first, based on the things we talked about today? Or?
I think that it would be helpful for us to have a clean version and the red line for reference, as I suggested. And then I think we can take that clean version and somehow, even if you need to do it by motions, and it sounds like you do, the clean version needs to be, a clean version that comes out of our next meeting needs to be part of the packet. that is available to council and to the public, so people know what they're talking about. I mean, we've spent some time here today talking about things that really weren't on the agenda. And part of it was because of that version confusion. We did spend time talking about a lot of historic district stuff, but in the clean version that results from our planning commission meeting next week should be somehow part of that packet for council for purposes of doing their second reading and their motions and whatever's procedurally required.
And to do that, compare what we passed under first reading, what the new clean copy is gonna look like, is that's gonna generate the amendments.
Yeah, so I would, what we're planning to do is, or Mike and I'll get together ASAP. First thing we need to do is just make sure that we got the right version that you had in the first reading with. If that version is not in line with our clean version, then we might have a lot more changes than we think of. We just need to make sure that the changes that we make, that the planning commission takes up and that are then recommended to you all are off of the version that you had your first reading on. Because
That's right.
it might be it might be quite a number of amendments, but at least we're making amendments to the right draft. If we find out that there's a problem in that regard, then we might have to go back to square one with a new first reading.
There's a consistency, there's some
Yeah.
consistency issue in the
Yeah.
18 months and the 12 months. 1 mile and a half mile, TIAs and so forth. And I think some consideration does need to be given to number one, cost, TIA for a radius as compared to a half mile radius. And also from the standpoint of whether once you get beyond a certain point, whether or not there is integrity to going out the additional half mile from the standpoint of what you're taking into consideration. Because, I mean, a TIA takes traffic considerations by intersections within an area and a realm around where new construction is being proposed. And when you move it out and take into consideration the other preliminary sections in there, I think you're gonna see the Ds and E's and the F's becoming much more prevalent in the central.
Right, so. I mean, I have a recommendation I had at the time, but I would go back to is that the TIA be based on intersections and that be determined by somebody with the expertise to say which intersections are affected. And if the best person we have may be staff. And so, an arbitrary number like a half mile or a mile is what's important. Is what are the intersections that are actually affected by this new development? And it may be that it's not even a half mile, but it might be more than a mile, because that's what you're really looking at. And traffic engineers know that. I mean, they know the intersections that are logically impacted, but you end up getting a different grade for each intersection. And so anyway,
The challenge.
but we'll take a look at it. We'll have.
So I'm not a traffic engineer, so,
I don't know if there's anyone you can rely on.
and if we had a traffic engineer, it would be a consultant, so.
Yeah.
My point about the 1 mile, you take Salem Point, it affects all the way down to Paris Island Gateway, which would be a mile.
That would be impossible.
But it affects the whole thing, because they'll come out over in the side roads, every which way out of there. It does affect it, so that's why I said a mile.
Yeah, it might be.
I have a question. So once we get this clean version, and we'll have that well before 19th of August. We all get to read it. Do we go to second reading and then we decide whether we approve or disapprove a second reading, or are we gonna have some sort of another rehashing meeting?
No, they'll.
The amendments.
Sounds like we're amendments, or a couple of amendments anyway.
So, yeah, I think that's what I was asking. Do we have a list of all the amendments which include councilman's amendments that were suggested?
Well, that's.
That's your comment about the copies, though. You
And then
wouldn't
do
be
we
making the
update-
amendments based on.
Because I
the
don't know,
copy
I'm
we
just trying
approved
to
already.
figure out what
That's the
they're
reading
supposed to do. Or. And then have the clean copy with those amendments made, or do we just have the clean copy from first reading and then with the?
Not made, I think. There could be a list of possible amendments. A clean copy can correct certain things like the omission of the word not, things like that. But if it's anything that's substantively changed from the draft that was read at the.
Has to be amended after.
Yeah.
Okay, so clean copy will correct all the scrivener's errors that I think
Right,
we saw,
numbering, that kind of stuff.
which I think it already did, so that's fine. But what do you want me to do with the red line version? Because I think that's been a little bit, because when you touch a red line version, especially in a meeting all together, and you do it in the meeting 16 or 18 times, it becomes a little messy, I'm gonna be honest with you, and I think
So
we're
say,
trying to, and that's my fault, Christopher was trying to kind of clean it up.
We have AI.
I'm not sure that it works so good all the time, so.
quite well.
Perhaps now is not the time to figure out how to use it.
What I would suggest you do, Kurt, is take one more, trip through the document and correct your numbering, correct little, Scrivener type errors. Accept, save that as something new after you do that. Accept all the changes in the new document, call it something else. And that would be your clean version. And you'd still have your old red line.
We are, and all the scriveners will be corrected, and then all the motions with substantive things, like, I think, this TIA half mile, that's a substantive issue, right?
Add the word
I think.
new as far as the gated
No,
communities,
or not,
all of
I
that.
think we can all agree it's not, capitalization is not.
Yeah. That's my new, I mean, that's nothing, it's the substantive stuff that from the first reading to the second reading, so we can do an amendment to make, when we pass the second reading, that we're getting what we want.
And was there anything else that's substantive that we haven't discussed? Yeah, everyone here thinks should be.
City council is going to take these proposed amendments that we have here,
We gotta make some corrections to these.
and send them back or just incorporate those as amendments.
Where'd this one come from?
This is the Chamber of Commerce.
That's the Chamber of Commerce notes, these are the amendments, the substantive things and scrivener errors that were in here are now part of this amendment package.
Yeah, so I think I was gonna update them, and I didn't know if you wanted to talk about any of those, 'cause there's a few substantive things that we haven't discussed.
Okay, go ahead and discuss.
I mean, some of them we're aware, removing some words, and I think I really showed like the typical, I think that was all, so I think that can be.
One of the main things they had was we had to have a title commitment at the
Local subdivisions, minor subdivisions, talking about the lot.
Yeah,
Ownership and
yeah.
title commitments.
Yeah, the sketch plan, we had it included in the sketch plan, and we agreed that we'd leave that out there, but in the preliminary plan, we needed to have it in there because, and quite frankly, if you're a developer trying to do this stuff, you would want to have title commitment before you start spending all the money to even go into the preliminary plan. But at a minimum, we wanted to have that stay in at the preliminary plan. They wanted it out of both. So we just took it out, or we left it into the preliminary plan.
But took it out of the sketch.
Took it out of the sketch, left it in the preliminary. I think that's appropriate, but I mean, we're spending our time doing it too. And just recently, we had the same thing where somebody thought they had the authority to do it because it was a father-in-law that was a partial owner, I think, or something. And they didn't have the agreement with him that they could do what they wanted to, so they had to come back and get that agreement, put it on the table, even though it was in the family, it didn't make any difference, we needed to have title commitment.
There was design.
Yeah.
And I think that was a little more controversial, it's planning commission felt like they should see just a theme of like massing and conceptual design before they test the project. And I think pushback from the developers is that one, they might not be the end builder, right? They're gonna probably sell the development. And they're not sure what that might end up. That was, I think, one of the more substantive,
But well, that comes up in the annexation situation, where they're annexing some property and they want a zoning classification. And they usually want to have the zoning classification that is giving them the most freedom.
It's always up,
Right.
every time.
And we don't have anything in our code right now about dealing with those annexation issues. That's something that we have on our list that we need to get to, but right now we have no guidance other than South Carolina statutes. But we do have, as far as the zoning classifications to be granted after annexations, I think there's consensus among the commission that we don't like dual zoning. We don't, we're disinclined to approve any more dual zoning situations, and the developers, they feel that that is, something they'd like to have a lot of time, because that just gives them. what
That's
they
like the
want.
T5DC/RMX.
RMX, yeah, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think we need to stay the same. But I think what Kurt was right. We on planning commission last time I was on, we're really frustrated because our hands are tied because we get a sketch plan that had roads on it, and that was it. And we would have we have to approve it or disapprove it based on just the roads, but we had no control over anything else that happened on that. Particular piece of property, so and of course, me being an architect, wanted to see some concepts of what they intend to do, some massing on typical lots, so we knew what the massing was gonna look like on particular lots, because that had a lot to do with the character there of that property as well as in the community. So those were the kinds of things that they wanted to take out, that I stand pretty strong on the fact we still need to see that kind of thing. We need to know what the intent is going into the community. And I can understand a developer owns a piece of property, he wants to get an approval from the city. They can go market it and say, hey, I got an approval for this, now you can go do whatever you want. That's not what we want. That's not in the best interest of the community. So that I've left in, or we've left in there.
Well, it's in the subdivision standards, requirements and the site plan requirements now.
Yes.
It's looking for consistency with the rest of the code and with whatever other, authority we have to. For example, on the site plan, we review it not just against the code, but also against community master plan and the comp plan and so forth. The civic master plan and that. So by having that up front, we're able to look at that consistency early on rather than approving the subdivision, then somebody comes in with massing and building designs that don't even comply with the rest of the requirements.
But those are really the major things, I think. I can't think of anything else that was that major of an issue.
And in our final version, it's not reflected in the red line. We don't approve a sketch plan anymore, we just provide comments. And part of that reason was to try to avoid what happened in the lawsuit on the dual approvals that'll happen at the historic review board. When you come forward with a subdivision, with a sketch plan, we'll give you your comments, but you don't walk away with approval. If you want to follow our comments, that's fine, but there's a good chance you're not going to get approved at the preliminary plat stage. But we give comments, we don't give an approval or a denial, comments. And that way, there's only one appealable action, the action when you get your preliminary plat approved.
So the comments would come first from PRC and then comments from
Planning
planning.
Commission.
All that you get is basically
Right.
direction on what.
It's a direction, exactly. And I think that's probably where we're leaning when we come up with final recommendations on the historic stuff as well as make, if there's a preliminary review, it's comments. And then there's only one action that becomes an appealable action. So you don't end up in a situation where somebody appeals a preliminary plat and they say, well, you failed to approve the sketch plan. And so, going to dismiss your appeal because you needed to appeal the earlier step. So we're trying to eliminate that kind of potential for legal challenge.
Well, that's a long way.
Huh?
Whatever happened to the storage district, a long way to go.
No, but we do it. Yeah.
I think those are just common sense things that we feel are in the best interest of the community. The rest of it is, I don't think, that large of an issue.
It's just for direction, just gonna make sure. So basically, we'll do the update, another clean version that has all the scrivener's errors made. And then we'll do this motion section that we have, that's all correct, with the additional items that were discussed today. Those will first be sent to the planning commission. Sure. I guess your hands are a little bit tied. You have to make the recommendation, right? So, I guess I'm not, just making sure we're doing this all right.
Yeah, I think that would be it, right? You guys talk about next week, that you make a recommendation. If there's any changes to city council, and then we can make amendments that are necessary to follow through with our second reading.
A lot of attorneys, you're all shaking your head, no,
Council or?
Oh, I was, the planning commission.
Yes, good.
Oh, one last thing that they referred to was appeals. Because it wasn't in theirs, and we have a whole, a section, that's been written, related to appeals.
Which is, I think in here in the back, yeah, I guess it's not part of the
Yeah.
discussion
They
now,
didn't,
but
they didn't see that.
if that wasn't part of the
They
right,
didn't see that.
yeah, 9.17.
Yeah.
We just determined, we decided to put it in a separate section. Because I went through all of the appeal statutes and there was a lot of conflicts. Well, the statutes are not well written when it comes to appeals. And so in the old code, we were giving appeal rights to people that I didn't feel were actually rights that were granted by the legislature. And so I thought that maybe the better thing to do is, rather than us make a mistake of rewriting the statutory appeal rights, is create a section where all of the appeals for the various actions are listed. And at that point in time, you need to hire an attorney anyway and have the attorney go to that section and look it up and read it, make its own determination as to what it says.
So Kurt, that's another point, just make sure whatever the clean version you prepare is only contains things that are up to be voted on. Don't have any extra stuff. If you have to redact it, do something, So that's why I think you need to make a new version. You can keep your old version, but make a new version that only has things to be voted on.
And I guess are some of these things that we have on the motions, like when you use the words typical, I mean, I guess it's good for you to see that they're there.
But I don't think those are amendments.
Do those need to be a specific motion from the council? I guess that's a.
I guess I got it.
Like capitalized major subdivision.
I have a question, maybe it's not, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to ask for something, the city managers, like. What is your view on what constitutes an amendment versus what can just be considered a scrivener's correction? Is there a limit on?
Kurt nailed it. It's pretty much a common sense.
Okay.
Reasonable standard. If it's an A to an and or capitalization error or something that does not change the substance.
So it'll be a judgment, if it looks like it's potentially substantive, we consider that an amendment, okay?
Be on the safe side.
Okay, be on the safe side.
Put it on the
If
amendment.
it changes the intent, then it probably is substantive enough to be an amendment.
Right, okay.
So the things that you got from us, for a large part, you can disregard until you get the new copies.
Right.
So a lot of that is scrivener.
So with that definition though, probably the word not, that in that section about the grading, that should be on the amendment list.
Sure.
Well, actually, it was
It's
made-
substantive.
It's a substantive change of the meaning.
Well, actually, it was already in the clean version.
It was in the clean version, then we're good. then we're good.
If it just ended up being an omission from a red line and it was in the original version, then we don't have, we voted on that already. So.
But something like 7.5.3 B for Roman numeral 2, remove the word harmonious and replace it with the word consistent. To me, that could be.
No.
The word. I'm just making sure.
Something we would probably say.
I don't wanna,
is amendment
I don't
to
wanna create any more
Sometimes
confusion.
you-
So I'm just trying to make it a little clearer.
I don't think, I don't think you're gonna get sued ever. Yeah.
Well.
Did that clear his mind?
Well, I kept asking questions, so I think but I think so. So we'll create Scrivener's error. We'll have a new clean version, all those corrected. Anything I think we'll talk about next Monday that we feel is substantive, anything that was raised by council today. We will have as a substantive motion. Okay, and we'll list it where it is in the motion.
You can't vote if it is council agreement, that's very good. Well, I want to appreciate all the work you all have done. Obviously, it's a couple of months, not a year. But I also want to thank everybody that showed up today for the meeting and gave us your input. I also want to thank council for the meeting. So with that, I'm going to adjourn our meeting.